Twin girls crash Billionaire's wedding with their mom, then drop a DNA bomb that changes everything. Hello, and a heartfelt welcome to Beyond Color Stories. I'm your storyteller, James, and wherever you are right now, whatever you're carrying in your heart, I just want you to know you're not alone. Before we dive into today's story, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? And are you already part of James's family here, or is this your very first visit? Either way, I'm truly grateful you're here. Can I speak a small prayer over you? May peace find your soul. May love gently hold you. And may today's story remind you that your journey matters. This channel is more than entertainment. It's a safe space for healing, for second chances, and for love that refuses to give up. If these stories move you, if they stir something deep inside, please be part of this journey. Subscribe not just for me, but for every soul who needs these stories. Let's grow, feel, and believe in love again. So grab a blanket, settle in, and open your heart wide, because this next story will change everything. It was supposed to be the wedding of the decade, sunlight flooding through towering glass windows, golden arches framing a perfect blue sky. The venue was fit for royalty, crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, velvet roses trailed down the altar, and a live string quartet played a melody written just for this day. Guests shimmered in silk gowns and tailored suits, their murmurs of admiration rising as Vanessa, the breathtaking bride in a designer gown, glided toward the altar. At the end stood Ranchers, the elusive billionaire tycoon, dashing in his tuxedo, as poised as ever. Cameras clicked discreetly, influencers streamed with silent awe, and the priest stepped forward, preparing to bless this union of beauty, status, and power. But destiny had a different plan. Just as the priest raised his hands, the heavy entrance doors creaked open. Not with thunder, but with quiet, commanding grace. The music faltered. Heads turned. Time stilled. And there, framed in sunlight, stood two little girls. They looked like reflections, mirror twins, no older than 9. Their long curled hair glimmered like golden ribbons, and their white cotton dresses fluttered with lilac prints around the hem. Holding hands tightly, their expressions were brave yet tender, scanning the sea of strangers. Behind them stood a woman whose quiet strength stole the room. Lionel, dressed in a soft lavender sari, her hair in an elegant twist. Her presence wasn't flashy, but it was unforgettable. Brown skin glowing like cinnamon, eyes deep and unreadable, lips pressed in resolve. She didn't march in. She stood still yet unwavering. A hush swept the crowd. A woman gasped. The flower girl froze mid-step, and Vanessa, halfway to the altar, stopped in her tracks, her silk train pooling like a spellbound wave. Then, from the silence, one of the girls stepped forward. Bana, with her hand pressed to her chest, looked directly at Ranchers. Her voice rang out steady and impossibly clear for someone so young. "Mr. Ranchers," she said, her eyes meeting his, "we believe you're our dad." The air split. A ripple of gasps echoed across the room. Guests leaned forward, stunned. The violinists lowered their bows. Vanessa's fingers clenched around her bouquet. And Ranchers, the man known for ruthless deals and unshakable calm, suddenly looked like a man drowning. He took one shaky step, then froze. Recognition flickered across his face. Shock. Fear. Something deeper. His gaze moved to the woman behind them. "Lionel," he said, his voice thick as if the name had been buried inside him for years. She didn't flinch. She didn't waver. Instead, she stepped forward. "I didn't come to destroy your day," Lionel said, her voice soft but firm. "I came for answers." The priest glanced nervously between the couple, the girls, and the crowd. There were no wedding guidelines for moments like this. Rancher's chest tightened. He could feel it, the girls' resemblance, the familiarity in their features. Then Tina stepped forward, her voice smaller but just as clear. "We're not here to ruin anything," she said, casting a shy glance toward Vanessa. "We just want to know, are you our daddy?" That question hit like thunder. Ranchers stumbled, hand on chest, as if struck by something physical. The girls, those eyes, that posture, it was all too real. And Lionel, she stood with no malice. No games. Only truth. The room buzzed with whispers. Phones lit up. Vanessa turned, trembling. "Tell me this isn't happening," she said, her voice breaking. "Say something, Ranchers." But he couldn't. Not yet. His thoughts were a whirlwind of memories, fragments he'd long buried. Bana's fire, Tina's calm. Echoes of someone he once loved. He finally exhaled, eyes never leaving the girls. I don't know," he said, voice cracked and low. "But I'll find out. We'll do a DNA test." Bana gave a tiny nod, already expecting the answer. Tina clutched her sister's hand tighter. Then silence until Vanessa's fury burst. She flung her bouquet to the floor. "You can't be serious. Not at our wedding." But Ranchers didn't budge. "I need to know," he said quietly. "I can't marry you with doubt in my heart." And in that moment, everything changed. His eyes found the twins again, and something stirred. Something undeniable. The wedding paused. The violinists fell silent. Guests rose, stunned. Vanessa stormed out. And Ranchers? He stood unmoving, his world spinning. In the far corner, two little girls held hands, whispering hope between them. They had come for truth. And maybe, just maybe, they had found something even greater. For days afterward, the mansion was buried in silence. No parties, no meetings. Just echoes on marble floors and shadows drifting through drawn curtains. Ranchers spent most of it locked in his office, surrounded by shelves of untouched cigars and case files. One envelope sat on his desk, unopened but never out of reach. Its corners bent from how often his fingers had hesitated to break the seal. This wasn't a contract. This was something deeper. More terrifying. Personal. When the clock struck midnight, moonlight spilled across the room. Finally, Ranchers opened the envelope. The paper trembled in his hands. Then he read it. And read it again. Bena and Tina, 100% biological match. His daughters. No room for doubt. No more wondering. Something shattered inside him, the last remnants of denial. And in its place, raw regret bloomed. The next day, headlines exploded. Billionaire fathered secret twins. The internet roared. Paparazzi circled his gates. Investors panicked. Vanessa vanished. But amid the chaos, Liana never faltered. She shielded the girls from cameras, declined interviews, refused to let scandal touch their innocence. She held her own, calm and resolute in the eye of the storm. That's when Ranchers asked to meet in private, away from reporters. They met in a quiet community garden behind a children's center, a place where Liana volunteered. The air smelled of jasmine and sunflowers. She stood beneath a vine-wrapped pergola, dressed simply in pale blue. Her calm radiated outward. She didn't look like someone caught in scandal. She looked like peace. Ranchers approached slowly, uncertain. "You should have told me," he said, not with anger, but disbelief. Her eyes met his, unwavering. "You left," she replied. "I stayed strong so they wouldn't feel abandoned." Her voice, soft as ever, was forged from years of quiet courage. "I didn't leave," he murmured, pain seeping through. "There was an accident. I lost everything, even memory." For the first time in years, his voice broke. Not from pressure, but from sorrow. She looked at him then and softened. "I saw the news," she said gently. "I waited. But when nothing came, I chose them." Her hand gestured to the garden, strong, blooming, alive. "I chose their peace." He nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. "You did the right thing." Later that evening, at his estate, Bena and Tina sat curled up in the sunroom, sipping cocoa, peeking through gauzy curtains as reporters buzzed beyond the gates. They weren't giddy. They weren't dazzled by fame. Tina whispered, "He knows now." Bena nodded, lips tight. But does he care? Their hearts were guarded, but not broken. When Ranchers entered, no suit, just a white shirt and jeans, they didn't run. They watched. He knelt eye to eye with them. The man who ruled boardrooms now stood before his most sacred challenge, being a father. "I saw the results," he said gently, voice stripped bare. "You're mine." The girls were quiet. Then Bena stepped forward, firm. "We don't want a billionaire," she said. "We want a dad." The words hit him harder than any deal ever had. His eyes burned. He blinked it back. "Then a dad is what I'll be," he whispered. Tina edged closer, touching his shoulder with trembling fingers. He took her hand, small, warm, real, and something in him opened. Over the following days, everything began to change, though. Up the girls from his estate, Ranchers walked them to the car carrying their backpacks slung over both shoulders like a human coat rack. The girls giggled and chattered about their weekend, the robot improvements, and how Dad burned the toast but claimed it was charcoal fusion. Liana stood by the open car door, watching the man who had once vanished from her life now kneeling to buckle Tina's seatbelt and smoothing Bena's curls behind her ear like it was the most natural thing in the world. He wasn't a visitor in their lives anymore. He was part of it. As he closed the door and stepped back, their eyes met over the roof of the car. "I think I'm getting the hang of it," he said with a half smile. She didn't smile back right away. "It's not a game to master," she said softly. "It's a life to show up for." He nodded slowly, seriously. "Then I'll keep showing up. Every day. If you'll let me." She didn't reply, not with words. But when she reached for the keys and their fingers brushed, she didn't pull away. And that was enough for now. The next few months passed in chapters, each one small, sacred. Ranchers started splitting his time not between cities but between science fairs and school plays. He learned how to pack lunches, drive carpool, and even became an honorary assistant coach for Baina's robotics team. When he wasn't helping Tina master her chess opening or hanging up another crayon drawing in his office, he was fixing leaks at Lionel's house or planting daffodils she'd long given up on blooming. His board of directors was confused. The press was insatiable. But ranchers didn't care. Because somewhere between pancake disasters and bedtime giggles, he found his center not in power but in presence. Not in empire but in love. One Friday night, as the girls dozed off after a backyard movie projected on the wall of the garage, ranchers and Lionel stood together by the flickering string lights. The garden shears she once used with clinical distance were replaced by a glass of wine in her hand. Her posture, once wary, had softened. "They called you Dad today," she said, eyes watching the sleeping girls wrapped in blankets. "I know," he whispered, emotion tightening his throat. "I heard it. Do you feel like one?" He turned to her then, voice low but certain. "I feel like I've been trying to become the man they already believe I am." Lionel looked at him for a long, long moment. "And me?" He stepped closer. You were the truth I lost. But I found you again. And I won't lose you twice." The silence between them filled with the night's breeze and crickets and the distant hum of memories rebuilt. Slowly, cautiously, she reached for his hand. "I'm not promising forever," she said, voice almost a breath. "You don't have to," he replied. "Just promise me tomorrow. And then let me earn the next." She didn't speak, but her fingers laced with his. And that was how the second part of their story began, not with a headline, not with a vow, but with a quiet, honest choosing. Over and over again. Every day. And in a world that once valued noise and notoriety, ranchers finally understood the greatest legacy he would ever leave behind was not his name in ink, but the sound of two little girls calling him Dad. And the echo of Lionel's footsteps beside his own, walking toward home. Unexpected places. Tucked inside Rancher's briefcase, slid into Lionel's cookbook, or pinned carefully to the fridge with magnets shaped like tiny hearts. The girls giggled behind corners, high-fived in secret, and whispered plans late into the night under shared blankets and starlit ceilings. They didn't need magic wands or fairy godmothers. They had something better, belief. And a love they'd seen with their own eyes, a love quiet and steady, mended over time, but still strong enough to make even the darkest storms seem like passing clouds. Lionel noticed first. The music that suddenly drifted through the hallway like a forgotten memory. The spontaneous drawings that tugged at her heart. The way ranchers lingered in doorways just to watch her stir soup or fold the girls' laundry. There were no grand declarations yet, no candlelit confessions or dramatic moments, but there were gestures. Quiet ones. Meaningful ones. Ranchers started showing up with wildflowers from the girls' garden or taking over bedtime stories just to sit beside her a little longer. He'd reach for her hand unconsciously during movies, let his fingers brush against hers when passing a plate, or pause too long when their eyes met over dinner. And Lionel, once guarded, found herself opening like a flower in slow bloom. Not rushing, not needing to, but letting herself feel. Then came the night they found the mission board. Ranchers had gone to say goodnight, only to spot it on the back of the door, glittery, loud, and unmistakably filled with love. Lionel followed his laughter to the bedroom and found him staring at it, utterly speechless. Operation Lovebird. Step 1. Make Dad smile more. Step 2. Make Mom wear lipstick again. Step 3. Romantic dinner with candles. Step 4. Wedding do-over for real this time ring. They looked at each other and laughed, deep, uncontrollable, joy-filled laughter that tasted like freedom and second chances. "I think we're being outmaneuvered," Ranchers murmured, his eyes bright. "Outmaneuvered by a pair of 8-year-olds, Lionel replied, shaking her head with a mock sigh. "They're relentless." But that night, after the girls had drifted into dreamland and the stars glowed quietly above them, Ranchers turned to Lionel and spoke not with fanfare or bravado, but with the tender certainty of a man who had rediscovered what mattered most. "Let's give them their ending," he whispered. "Not the fairy tale. The real one. The one where love takes its time and still wins." Lionel said nothing for a long moment. She simply placed her hand over his heart and felt it beating steady beneath her palm. Then, with a soft smile, she nodded. Outside, the wind sang through the trees like a lullaby. And inside that home, once silent, once broken, there bloomed something rare and enduring, not a perfect love, but a true one. The kind built with crayons and quiet nights. With forgiveness. With firelight. With daughters who believed in happy endings. And two hearts finally ready to live them. No one plotted more sweetly or more brilliantly than two little girls who just wanted their mom and dad to fall in love again, or maybe for the first time in the light of day. They didn't care about headlines or gossip. They didn't need applause. All they wanted was to see that look in their father's eyes when he saw Lionel not as a stranger, not as someone from a distant past, but as the woman he never truly stopped loving. One ordinary Wednesday, Ranchers came home from a long board meeting, worn out but strangely at peace. As he loosened his tie, he heard laughter from the kitchen. Lionel was baking with the girls, her hands dusted in flour, humming a tune that tugged at long-buried memories. He reached for his wine glass and found a glittery note taped to it. "Kiss her, dummy." He chuckled. Bana flashed a guilty grin. "We didn't do it," she said, then burst into giggles. Tina hugged his leg and whispered, "It's okay to love her, Daddy." That weekend, they invited him for a simple dinner. "Just friends," Tina said, eyes sparkling with mischief. But when he arrived, overdressed for casual, he found a table set for two, candles flickering, paper flowers overhead. The girls were gone. Lionel stood in the kitchen, flustered. "They tricked us," she murmured with a shy smile. He didn't mind. Dinner was humble, pasta, salad, and bread. But the conversation was rich memories, quiet hopes, the ache of time lost. They recalled meeting in a rainstorm, how her laugh had overpowered thunder. She hadn't dressed for romance, but in her soft sweater and jeans she looked more radiant than ever, real, resilient, breathtaking. Afterward, he walked her to the door, every step slow, weighted with unspoken words. Their hands brushed. She turned. He leaned in. But just before their lips could meet, he paused. His hand rested gently on her arm. She didn't pull away. "Good night, Lionel," he whispered. "Good night," she replied, heart racing. Behind the bedroom door, Bana and Tina listened in the dark. "Did it happen?" Bana asked. Tina shook her head. "Not yet. But it will." In the days that followed, Operation Lovebird intensified. Heart-shaped cookies. Wallpaper photos swapped with pictures of Lionel laughing. Backyard lunches dressed up like banquets. Ranchers started staying longer, reading bedtime stories. Lionel began humming again. It was a slow rekindling, not a fiery passion, but the steady warmth of something long buried now rising again. The girls kept notes of every smile, every blush, every stammered, "You look nice today." Their mission had become something bigger than a kiss. It was healing. It was hope. Then one evening, under a sky of lavender and gold, Ranchers called. "Would you have dinner with me?" he asked. "Just us. Somewhere quiet." Lionel said yes. That night, he prepared everything, the rooftop where they once danced beneath city lights. String lights twinkled. Jazz played softly. At the center of the table sat a photo of them holding the twins as babies, messy, real, full of love. She arrived in a navy dress, stars stitched into the fabric. "This place," she whispered, "it hasn't changed." "But we have," he said, pulling out her chair. Dinner began slow, but as candles flickered and memories stirred, the walls between them crumbled. "I made mistakes," he said, voice rough. "I left. I thought I was protecting you, but I was just afraid." Lionel looked at him, eyes soft. "You were the dream. And I hated myself for still loving you after you left. But I never stopped. Not once." Their hands found each other, fingers lacing like puzzle pieces reunited. "You made me feel like home," he said. "And I left that behind. I survived because I had to," she said. "For them. For me." They talked through tears and laughter, through courses of food left untouched. When he asked if she still danced in the kitchen, she nodded. Sometimes just with memory. Dessert arrived, chocolate cake and strawberries, but they hardly noticed. Their eyes were doing all the speaking now. He stood and offered his hand. "May I?" They danced beneath the stars, no cameras, no world, just them, slow and close. "In my dreams," he whispered, "you didn't forgive me." "In mine," she said, "you never left." When he finally kissed her, it wasn't fiery, it was reverent. A kiss of truth, of healing, of home. "What now?" she asked. "I don't want weekends and goodbyes anymore," he said. "I want every bedtime story. Every scraped knee. I want forever with all three of you." She didn't answer with words. Her eyes did. "Then let's build it," she said. "Not start over, just keep going. Together." And beneath that starlit rooftop, the past softened. The pain quieted. Something broken began to shine again, not perfect, but beautiful. Far below, two little girls slept soundly, smiles on their faces. Their mission wasn't over. But the spark had finally caught flame. Above them, wrapped in candlelight and quiet hope, Ranchers and Lionel embraced not only each other but a future newly theirs to write. The rooftop dinner had ended, but its warmth clung to them like a hush of love that refused to fade. They didn't speak much on the ride home, just held hands across the console, a silent promise that something old had been released and something new was gently being born. The city blurred in gold and silver, but all they saw was each other. Ranchers kept glancing at her, a soft smile playing on his lips, like he still couldn't believe she was truly beside him in life. Peace had returned to his heart, but so had something else, an urgency, a longing to make this real, lasting, true. At her doorstep, under dim lights and familiar shadows, Lionel lingered, brushing her fingers along his jacket lapel. "Good night," she whispered. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asked. She smiled. "You're seeing me now." And with a kiss to his cheek, a quiet seal of everything they'd reclaimed, she stepped inside. Inside, Bena and Tina were wide awake, hearts buzzing. They'd seen the glow in their mother's face, the smile Ranchers gave them when he tucked their drawings into his wallet. Something magical had begun, and they weren't going to waste it. By sunset the next day, the twins had crafted a plan stitched in glitter and hope. Ranchers arrived to find the girls waiting with mischief in their eyes. "We need your help," Bena declared. "It's a surprise for Mommy," Tina added. And as they whispered their plan, his heart swelled. That evening, the backyard shimmered. Twinkle lights, fireflies in jars, a table draped in a simple white sheet, flower crowns and barefoot dreams. Lionel stepped outside, drawn by the girls' giggles, and stopped when she saw it. Ranchers, eyes full of trembling devotion, holding a small wooden box. "I know I missed so much," he said, voice thick, "but love brought me back. I never stopped looking for you." Then on one knee, "Will you let me be your husband, their father, your forever?" Her yes came through tears and laughter, falling into his arms as the girls squealed and wrapped around them all. A new family sealed beneath a sky of fireflies and forgiveness. By morning, the backyard became their wedding chapel. No guests, no gowns, no glittering press, just them. Bena and Tina laid petals on the grass. Lionel wore a simple dress and jasmine in her hair. Ranchers wore the shoes she once gave him. As Lionel walked down the path hand in hand with their daughters, Ranchers felt the world tilt back into place. "I give my mommy away," Bena announced. "Because he earned her." The crowd, a friend and two neighbors, smiled through tears. With vows full of truth, rings exchanged by tiny hands, and a kiss wrapped in years of waiting, they began again, not from scratch, but from grace. And under the soft canopy of lights and love, a man who thought he'd lost his chance found home again, in her arms, in their daughter's laughter, and in a promise finally fulfilled. The laughter of children echoed through the trees, and at the sound, Bena and Tina broke into a sprint, colliding into their parents' arms, wrapping themselves in the kind of embrace that spoke more of soul than skin. The four of them held each other tightly, a perfect imperfect circle of love. No need to move, no words to speak, just the quiet understanding that this moment was everything. This softness, this healing, this beginning. The wedding hadn't been interrupted, it had been completed beautifully, fully. And this time, the bride and groom weren't just lovers. They were parents, partners, home. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, casting its final golden sigh across the sky, the colors of twilight melting into the velvet hush of night. Inside the quiet, sacred dusk, Ranchers gently scooped Lionel into his arms, holding her with a reverence that said, "You are my everything." Not just desire, but devotion. As if lifting her lifted the weight of all those lost years, the ache of absence dissolving in the rhythm of her breath against his chest. He carried her into their suite, no hotel preparation, no planner's touch, just the work of his own hands. Each candle carefully lit with intention. Each rose petal scattered by their twin daughters earlier that day, now whispering beneath their feet like soft blessings. A silence settled around them, not empty but holy, one where love didn't need to shout. It simply hummed. In the flicker of flame, the brush of fingers, the air between breaths. He set her down gently, her feet sinking into plush white carpet, her eyes wide, soft with wonder. She turned slowly, taking it all in. The pillows piled like clouds near the headboard, a throw blanket folded with care, lavender and vanilla drifting in the air, faint jazz humming somewhere discreet. Nothing grand, just tender, intentional. Made for rediscovering, not seducing. She turned to him, heart full, and he took her hands in his, lifting them to his lips. The kiss he gave her was not hurried. It lingered, still and reverent, like a prayer. He didn't speak right away, because some moments are too deep for words. They stood like that, searching one another's eyes, reading each wrinkle, every freckle, every silent story time had written. At last he whispered, voice husky with emotion, "Tonight is for us." "Not for passion," she replied softly, her fingers tightening around his, "but for healing." They didn't begin with touch, but with the undoing of time. Her hands moved slowly to the buttons of his shirt, each undone like a scar gently opened, seen, forgiven. His fingers, shaking not from nerves but from reverence, slipped the straps of her dress down her shoulders. And there she was, real, radiant, shaped by life. The curve of her waist softened by motherhood. The tiny scar on her hip from that bike fall she laughed through. The faint stretch lines where her daughters had grown inside her while he was gone. He touched each mark as if reading poetry, each line a testament to her strength. Her story. And she, in turn, traced his chest with her fingers, across places where muscle had softened, where streaks of silver threaded his dark hair. She didn't mourn the changes. She honored them. This man had walked through fire and come out tender. He had chosen love over pride. Chosen them. They didn't rush. They moved like dancers who had studied the choreography from afar and were now, finally, allowed to move together, slow, reverent, in sync. When he laid her gently on the bed, it wasn't to claim her. It was to cradle her. When he climbed in beside her, his body pressed against hers not with urgency, but with reverence. His lips touched her shoulder, light as a whisper, then her collarbone. And she arched not from instinct but invitation. Her fingers threaded through his hair as she whispered, "Thank you for coming back." His breath caught. He pressed his forehead to her chest, where her heart beat strong and steady. "Thank you," he murmured, "for not giving up on me." And when their lips finally met, the kiss was deep, slow, hungry, not with lust, but with longing that had waited years. Every sigh, every touch, said, "I see you. I choose you. You are mine." Not in ownership, but in devotion. They moved together like tides, sometimes slow, sometimes rising, but always in harmony. They rediscovered each other not just through touch, but through presence, through reverence. And when she cried, it wasn't from pain, it was from the overwhelming grace of being seen again. Wanted. Cherished. He kissed away her tears, whispering comfort between every touch, "I've got you now, love. I've got you." And when their bodies finally found their rhythm, slow, deep, true, it wasn't wild. It was worship. They didn't measure their lovemaking in hours, but in healing. In the time it took for walls to fall, wounds to open and close again, whole. Until every sigh whispered, "You're safe." Later, as the rain tapped gently on the windows, they lay wrapped around each other, still and warm. Her head on his chest. His arms around her back. Legs tangled. Hearts aligned. No words needed. The world outside moved on, a raindrops pattering, wind brushing the trees. But inside, time stood still. Their love story, once fractured by silence and space, was now whole again. Not a performance. Not a fantasy. But a lived, breathed, healed reality. As sleep claimed them, Lionel's fingers slipped into his, her thumb tracing the quiet thrum of his pulse. Ranchers whispered into the dark, not loud, not planned, just true. "This is home. Right here with you." And she, eyes still closed, smiled. Because this time she believed it with every beat of her heart. Morning arrived gently, golden light streaming into the nursery, casting soft hues across pastel walls stenciled with clouds and rainbows. The coo of a baby girl floated through the air, followed by the joyful patter of little feet. Bana and Tina burst into the room in matching heart-patterned pajamas, giggling like wind chimes in spring. Ranchers, barefoot, a burp cloth slung over one shoulder, lifted the baby into his arms with the ease of practiced love, murmuring nonsense that made her gurgle in delight. The twins stood beside him, their eyes full of wonder, each gently brushing their baby sister's dark curls, curls just like their mother's. Her eyes, deep and knowing, already holding the calm of Lionel's soul. From the doorway, Lionel watched, arms folded over her chest, her heart swelling until it nearly burst. Here it was, the life she'd once only imagined. Real. Loud with giggles. Mismatched socks. Baby powder. Love spilling like sunlight through open windows. Ranchers kissed the baby's head, then handed her carefully to Tina, who held her like she was made of stars. "Breakfast must be pancakes today," Bana declared, with extra chocolate chips and Dad's pink frosting. Ranchers saluted with a playful grin. "Yes, ma'am," he boomed, already heading to the kitchen, baby giggling in her sister's arms. Lionel kissed all three girls in turn, then slipped her hand into Ranchers's. Their fingers laced together as naturally as breath. They moved as one now, the rhythm of their days. No longer rushed, no longer broken. Just beautifully cluttered. Coloring books on the couch. Tiny socks in the laundry. Crumbs from midnight cookie raids. Half-finished bedtime stories. Outside, the sunflower garden bloomed, a living tribute. Ranchers had planted it one afternoon with dirt on his knees and a bouquet of seedlings in hand, saying, "I want you to see sunlight every morning and remember, we bloomed again." Lionel had cried then, not from sadness, but from the aching sweetness of being truly seen. Now, the twins danced through those golden stalks, their laughter rising like music. Ranchers sat on the porch, baby in one arm, cookie in the other. Lionel spread a blanket on the grass, set down a pitcher of orange juice and 3 little cups with rainbow straws. A picnic. A moment she would remember forever, not for its perfection, but for its presence. Later, sidewalk chalk masterpieces sprawled across the driveway, crooked hearts, smiling suns, and the bold, proud title. Best Dad Ever, in pink and blue. Ranchers laughed, scooping the girls into a bear hug. Lionel, lying back on the blanket, let the sun kiss her cheeks while the baby nestled against her, one small hand clinging to her shirt. And she knew. Her world had been rewritten. Not by grand gestures, but by the ordinary magic of everyday love. That evening, as the sky turned lavender, ranchers filled the bathroom with bubbles while Lionel dressed the baby in her favorite starry onesie. Laughter echoed. Splashes. Storytime followed, Lionel reading, ranchers doing silly voices, the girls snuggled close. When the final page turned and little snores began, ranchers carried the twins to bed, kissing them goodnight. Lionel laid the baby in her crib. Then they met in the hallway, arms around each other, foreheads touching. No words. Just breath. Presence. Home. Later, they lay in bed. Not from exhaustion, but peace. Limbs tangled. Hearts steady. Ranchers brushed a strand of hair from Lionel's face. "This," he whispered, voice thick with awe, "this is the greatest thing we ever built." And she nodded, tears in her eyes. Because she knew he wasn't talking about walls or gardens. He meant this family. This love. The quiet kind. The sacred kind. And as they drifted into sleep, her fingers curled around his once more. Somewhere down the hall, a baby stirred. 2 sisters dreamed of cookies and chalk and picnics beneath sunflowers. And that was their legacy. Not perfection, but presence. Not wealth, but warmth. Not a love story told in magazines, but one whispered under blankets, sung in lullabies, baked into pancakes, and scribbled in chalk for the world to see. And remember.